Well, very pleased to be joined by a very familiar face in a new role. Once again, Jordan Bateman, now of the Independent Contractors and Business Association of British Columbia. I got it right this time. And you're here today because you had a press conference about the Site C Dam. A lot of drama in the news lately. We've had letters going back and forth from John Horgan and Andrew Weaver to Jessica McDonald, the CEO of BC Hydro. Then Christy Clark responded. We saw a letter yesterday from the Carpenters Union. What's going on with Site C? Where do things stand? And why is this project so important to keep moving forward?
I believe the dictionary defines this as a silly slap fight, where you have politicians who think they know better than the people who are actually working on the project today. So Site C Dam, massive project in the northeast of British Columbia. 2,245 people, men and women, got up today, put on tool belts, went to work building that dam. Now, it's a huge project, $9 billion, but it's a project that's for the next 100 years worth of clean energy in BC. And certainly when you look at Ontario and some of the goofy energy decisions they've made, terrible energy decisions, you want to have that backbone of cheap, reliable power going forward. So John Horgan and Andrew Weaver, though, with a power base on Vancouver Island and in the Lower Mainland, don't really care about the North. Bluntly, they don't have any seats there. Why would they? In fact, in Site C's riding, they were beat 10-1 by the BC Liberal candidate. So they've come out and said, we're going to review it, but really they're going to review it under current supply and demand. And that word current is problematic because a $9 billion project, you're not building it for today. It's a 100-year dam. You're building it for years 65 and 75 and 85 for our grandkids and great-grandkids to make sure that they can power all of the incredible technologies to come. So we're, the ICBA, we have hundreds of workers there. Of the 2,200, there's both unionized and non-unionized workers. We want to see that project continue, and we're going to stand up for those folks who are too busy working their job to actually be here to fight the politicians.
Very good. And, that's something that drives me crazy about sort of just general planning is we never seem to build for the future, especially in Canada. We always seem to sort of look at things right now. And I'm glad you brought that up because when I looked at John Horgan's letter and I questioned him even during the campaign on this, I said, why isn't major hydroelectric part of your plan? And he seems to just believe that hydroelectric is now a legacy technology, that we should be looking at, of course, the solar, the wind, the geothermal, all those other, as Alex Epstein says, it unreliable sources of electricity. What would happen? Would we really be going down that same path of Ontario? Should we shut down Site C and try to look at some of these unreliable forms?
Well, I mean, we should always be looking at other forms of energy. Absolutely. That makes sense. You take it case-by-case basis. Now, some of the strongest opponents of Site C are actually people who are making money from the independent power producer industry. And this is kind of the dirty little secret about the opposition there is they get money from IPPs, so they're trying to kill Site C so that they can build more IPPs. Right. I find that very, very problematic. Look, on a day like today, it's June. It is pouring rain in Vancouver. I'm sorry, solar is not going to be able to power the cars and the vehicles we see here today. Gregor Robertson wants to ban natural gas in Greater Vancouver, or in Vancouver itself. If we ban natural gas in British Columbia, we would need 30 Site Cs just to replace the natural gas energy, let alone all the fuel and stuff. So you can't have it both ways. Horgan and Weaver being hypocritical. Heck, Andrew Weaver was one of the most powerful supporters of this project in 2009, 2010. Then he got elected and changed his mind.
Fair enough. And so there are some criticisms of BC Hydro and the Site C Dam right now, and I thought maybe you could just address some of those. One of them is that let's assume that we do have excess power in the early days of the Site C Dam, that we may sell it, but it will be sold for a big loss. Is that a fact, or is that sort of anti-Site C propaganda?
Well, anything is possible. Look, in those early days, who knows? You may actually sell some of that power to loss, but this is a 100-year project. We talk about infrastructure, a government-built infrastructure, and, there's certain projects that if you could just replicate over and over again, we wouldn't have the kind of spending problems we have today. The Pattullo Bridge, for example, a 91-year-old bridge, still transporting thousands of commuters today in Greater Vancouver. That's the kind of infrastructure that we need to build. Infrastructure that's going to last for decades. Site C is that. So I'm not so concerned about year 1 or year 2, but I'm more concerned about year 50, year 70, and year 100.
Last question for you then. This may sort of be a throwback to sort of your old position with the Taxpayers Federation, but there's a lot of criticism about the debt load that BC Hydro is now carrying. Obviously, a $9 billion project, we don't do pay-as-you-go anymore, unfortunately. WAC Bennett long in the past now, but, Does that concern you at all, that the capital debt that BC Hydro has accumulated and will continue to accumulate with this Site C dam project could end up hurting credit ratings, could end up hurting ratepayers? What do you make about those criticisms?
Yeah, debt is a big cloud on the horizon, no matter who is going to become premier. Whether it's the up against that 95% debt to GDP cap in the provincial side, whether it's the Port Mann Bridge and bringing that into government and that will trigger credit rating downgrades, or BC Hydro. I'm not going to stand here and say the Liberals have run BC Hydro flawlessly. They haven't. There have been many issues going on. But some of the things they actually have started to correct. We used to complain about BC Hydro having to pay a dividend to government. Government's ratcheting that down. And I'm hopeful that, the next government eliminates that completely. We need to make those kind of decisions. But look, I kind of carve out Site C as a little bit different. This is like, if you're going to borrow for something, infrastructure is probably what you want to borrow for, and 100 years worth of infrastructure probably makes the most sense. This isn't some borrowing to, cover the groceries or something like that. This is like a 100-year project that our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids will rely on to power, virtually everything in British Columbia that's going to happen.
I did lie. Last question, I guess, would be actually, so a lot of proponents and opponents say that, the Site C is only going to be designed to power an LNG industry or possibly the oil sands. To me, that sounds like a great idea. Why not reduce the emissions of a fairly emission-intense business in fossil fuel extraction?
Yeah, and this should be the takeaway for everyone who supports Site C. These guys don't care about Site C. They care about killing fossil fuels, and they'll do whatever it takes, even be hypocrites when it comes to hydroelectric power. And they're out to snuff this industry out. And the way to do that is, if you're using natural gas feedstock to power LNG, then you're creating greenhouse gas emissions and you're obviously evil and, the Paris Accord and all of that. It's nonsense. If this power was used to produce more clean energy, great. It's like parlaying something good. It's like taking $20 and investing in and having $50. That's a great idea. I'm not sure it will be. It goes back and forth. There are certain cases where it probably will work and certain cases where it won't. But make no mistake, the fight against Site C is a fight against fossil fuels, and it's people who are really hoping that the average Joe doesn't realize the hypocrisy between their positions.
And I sort of think that's kind of why maybe Andrew Weaver's flipped his opinion on this, because I think he now sees it as a key to powering more fossil fuels. All right, Jordan Bateman, first time with us in his new role with the Independent Contractors and Business Associations for British Columbia. I'm Christopher Wilson for the Rebel.media.